Napoli fans around the world, welcome to Napoli Talk. If you're new to the channel, then go ahead and smash an early like button and subscribe, because if you like to hear stuff about Napoli, well, we talk about Napoli on this channel. And today in particular, this video is about Lorenzo Insigne. Now, we all know Lorenzo Insigne is a huge talent and has always been a huge talent of European football, the homegrown Napoli boy. 111 goals for Napoli, countless assists, but what a lot of people don't know is actually over the last 10 years, his relationship with the Napoli supporters has not always been lovey-dovey. In fact, it's been a roller coaster of different emotions, at one point completely spiraling down, and that's what makes his last 12 months at Napoli so special. But before we can talk about the rise of Lorenzo Insigne, we have to understand from what depths he was rising from and where it all started. So let's take a look at his early career at Napoli. So Lorenzo Insigne starts his first full season for Napoli in the 2012-2013 season off the back of a crazy year in Serie B with Pescara, with the likes of Ciro Immobile and Marco Verratti propelling them to the Serie A. Insigne comes into Napoli with huge expectations around him, and everybody understands what talent we have, and he is the first homegrown talent in a very long time, since the likes of Fabio Cannavaro and Ciro Ferrara. And really, I consider Insigne's early part of his career all the way up to the year that Napoli almost won the Scudetto in 17-18. So that's a large part of 6 years. I consider that Insigne's early career at Napoli, and those 6 years are just a roller coaster of different emotions. He would have some brilliant performances, like that free kick that he scored against Dortmund in the Champions League in his first year in the Champions League. And then he would have some other performances, like the one that he had against Atletico Bilbao, where at home he misses an early opportunity, and that's ultimately what cost Napoli Champions League football that year. But it is in that game that Insigne gets whistled for the first time, or gets booed for the first time, because of that miss, and he ironically applauds the fans. And then as he's substituted by Rafael Benitez, he throws his shirt to the ground, which makes the fans go even crazier. Now, Insigne would have several moments like this where the fans would criticize him for not having played well enough, for going through periods, 1 or 2 months, where he wouldn't score a single goal. And a lot of the time, the more games that would pass that Insigne wouldn't score a goal, the more the pressure would rise, the more he thought he had to do something spectacular, and the more he would fail. The more he would try to do a tiro a giro from out of nowhere, when actually the best solution would have been to pass the ball. And the fans would get extremely annoyed with Insigne. And he would become the scapegoat of every situation. And that is purely because he was by far one of the most talented players on the field, and Napoli fans expected much more out of him. But on the other hand, Insigne never helped himself, always reacting to these boos and never trying to de-escalate the situation. Now, what is particularly crazy about this whole thing is that it would also happen in periods where Napoli was doing extremely well. So, for example, in the 17-18 season, the one where Napoli reached 91 points, was so close to winning the title, in one of the most iconic games of the season, where Napoli come back from 2-0 down to draw 2-2 against Chievo in the final moments of that game, Lorenzo Insigne was booed in that match for having missed a few opportunities. And that is crazy to think that we were in the title race, doing better than we had ever done, and the fans were still booing Insigne, and Insigne was, to be fair, not performing at the level that he should be performing. It was a few games that Insigne had not scored a goal, had not assisted, and he reacted once again. And then ultimately, when Napoli did draw that game in the final breaths of that match, the whole squad went and celebrated with the fans. It was probably the happiest draw that Napoli fans ever had, because it kept the title hopes alive. And whilst everybody was celebrating, Insigne was the only person that went back to the changing room. And ultimately, in Napoli's best ever year, Insigne only managed 8 goals, and that is one of his worst years at Napoli. So you could see that it was such a roller coaster between Insigne, between the fans, and a lot of people really felt by the end of that year that if only Insigne had had a better year, then maybe Napoli could have won the title. And there was a lot of resentment with Insigne back then. And then there's the second phase of Insigne's career at Napoli, and that's when he receives the captaincy. That's when Marek Hamsik leaves to go to China, and all of a sudden, Napoli have a new captain for the first time in about 10 years. And you can imagine this Insigne, who isn't emotionally mature, all of a sudden also becomes captain of his home team, and he spirals down at that point. At that point, Napoli have Ancelotti, who's in charge, and tactically the team was a mess. We were playing a 4-4-2, which had nothing to do with the players at our disposal. We had Zielinski playing as in front of the defense. We had Lozano up top, and Insigne and Callejon on the right and left wings instead of being pushed further up forward. So it was a mess of a situation, and Ancelotti lost complete control of that changing room by his second year and fell out massively with Insigne, to the point that Insigne, our own captain, did not get into the Champions League squad against Genk early on in the season in October. And at that point, at the end of 2019, it was one of the darkest moments for Napoli. We just couldn't find results. And towards the end of 2019, that was not only maybe Insigne's darkest moment, but probably also Napoli's darkest moment. So that was a time when both things came together, and it just made things even worse, because you can imagine if Napoli fans were going at Insigne when things were going relatively well, you can imagine how hard they were going at him when things were not going so well. And Insigne and Alan go at Aurelio De Laurentiis' son, Eduardo, in the changing room. There's a big fight, and the mutiny happens. So in November, we have a situation where the fans are against the team, and players like Insigne and Alan specifically. They're against the coach, they're against De Laurentiis. De Laurentiis is against the players, he sues them, he's against the coach, he sacks Ancelotti. It's a mess at Napoli, and obviously Insigne being captain and the most talented player, he gets the most criticism out of everybody. A lot of people say if Hamsik was still captain, that would have never happened. But even before that whole mutiny thing happened, it was never going well with Ancelotti and Insigne, and between Insigne and the fans in the first year of Ancelotti, where Insigne changed his agent to none other than Mino Raiola, which we all know, if you have Mino Raiola as an agent, it means you want to leave your club. You want a big money move out of your club. And so the fans did not react well to that. Insigne even made an interview right after changing his agent saying, look, I'm 28 right now. If the right offer comes, then I might consider it, because I'm tired of not winning any trophies. So not happy days for Insigne. But as I said, Gattuso comes in at the end of 2019, steers the ship, we win a Coppa Italia. And the interesting thing about when Gattuso came was that he gave the players trust again. He put them back in their natural positions. Napoli went back to a 4-3-3, and that made Insigne a much happier man. And because of that, he was able to put in better performances once again. Now, the team did not do fantastically well, apart from that Coppa Italia win, because we still didn't get Champions League football in the 2 seasons that Gattuso was there. But the individual performances from players like Lozano, Zielinski, and Insigne were at their peak. So Insigne is doing better than what he was doing with Ancelotti, but deep down he was still an emotional wreck. Or if not an emotional wreck, he was definitely not man enough and mature enough to be captain of Napoli still. And the end of 2020 and the start of 2021 really exemplifies this, where Insigne goes to his absolute lowest with Napoli. Now, it is Inter against Napoli, December 2020. Napoli at that point are still in contention for the title, theoretically. We are playing a very good game, and then we get a penalty awarded against us. And at that point, Insigne goes up to the ref and says something to him, insults him, and the ref gives him a straight red. Now, some might argue that's a bit harsh. Insigne didn't say anything too bad, but again, Hamsik would have never done something like that. A mature captain would have never done something like that. So it really showed how Insigne mentally was just not there yet, and he cost us the game at that point. And from that point onwards, Insigne starts doing really, really badly. And a month later, we have the Super Cup against Juventus. Juventus at this point are leading 1-0, and Napoli get a penalty in the 80th minute. And up steps Lorenzo Insigne. He's already missed a penalty against Juventus in the past in his career. He steps up, and he's got fear in his eyes. And with this fear, he misses the penalty. And at that point, he knows he messed up, and he just starts crying on the field and has to be taken off. And it's a really sad image to see Insigne crying on the bench while Napoli end up losing that game. That's when Insigne hit his lowest point, because he quite literally cost Napoli a title, and you could see the tears in his eyes. It wasn't even anymore him going against the fans, it was him breaking down, and that is his lowest point. But like all good superhero stories, when you are put in the deep end and you've got two options to either swim or drown, superheroes decide to swim, and Insigne swam straight up. It's only 3 weeks later that Napoli play against Juventus one more time at home in a huge game that is the decider at that point between who's going to get into the Champions League. Little did we know that we wouldn't get into the Champions League anyways, but it was a huge game for Napoli, and it's off the back of Insigne having some really poor performances. He just missed that penalty against Juventus in the cup, and Napoli get a penalty in that match. And he was criticized so heavily over the last 3 weeks before that moment, that it would have seemed impossible before the game to think that Insigne would step up one more time against Juventus if we were to get a penalty. But that's exactly what Insigne did. As a true captain, he took the responsibility, knowing full well that if he missed one more time, he might not leave that stadium alive. But he took responsibility and he scored a goal, and that liberated Insigne. That was the moment that Insigne realized, I am man enough to do this. And that's the moment that Napoli fans thought, damn, he just did that. We wouldn't have had the guts to do something like that. And from that point on, from February onwards, Insigne doesn't stop, and he ends the season with his best ever goal and assist tally. 19 goals and 11 assists that season. And we don't make Champions League football for a draw in the last game of the season. But for the first time in a long time, no one criticizes Insigne anymore. No one thinks that he's not putting in enough effort. No one thinks that it's because of him that we didn't get into the Champions League. The criticisms stopped in February, and we all realize we've got a real man leading this team now. And Insigne's rise is consolidated this summer, having won the Euros with Italy and being an integral part of that team after not really being a protagonist in recent expeditions with other coaches. But he's playing every game as a starter pretty much, except when the starters were rested. And arguably, in the hardest game of Italy's run, which is against Belgium, he scores, I think, the most beautiful goal of the Euros. And the way he takes that ball from midfield and single-handedly goes past 2-3 Belgian players and curls it in his signature move, that's when he not only showed Napoli fans and Italy fans what he's about, but he showed the world what he's about. And we go into this season with Insigne being on his last year of his contract, and there's a lot of rumors around whether he's going to renew, whether he was going to go to Inter. And Spalletti starts off with his first press conference of the season saying, look, I'm not worried about Insigne. Insigne is the type of guy who went against 60,000 Englishmen at Wembley and lifted a trophy in front of them. I don't think he's going to be bothered by a few rumors about his future. And Insigne showed exactly that he's not bothered by the rumors around his future. He's 100% committed to being Napoli captain, and his performances prove that once again, taking responsibility when responsibility is needed. And we see that in the first game of the season, Napoli against Venezia. Osimhen gets sent off within 20 minutes. Napoli are 10 men down, and in the second half, Napoli get awarded a penalty. Game-changing moment. Obviously, up steps Insigne, but he misses. And instead of going and crying this time, like he did a few months ago against Juventus, this time Insigne stays calm, collected, tells the team, it's all right, we got this, we still got this. Essentially, he is what Napoli need at that point. And 5 minutes later, thanks to that attitude, Napoli get a second penalty. And you guessed it, none other than Insigne steps up one more time, knowing that, hey, if I actually do mess up 2 penalties in a row, maybe the boos will come back. But he takes responsibility. He's willing to sacrifice his relationship with the fans once again for the good of the team, and shows the team, look, I got you, I'm the captain. And he steps up and he scores, and we win that game. And ultimately, now we're 7 games unbeaten in the league. Not only unbeaten, but 7 out of 7 wins. And that all starts with Insigne's double penalty against Venezia. Anyways, guys, I hope you liked the video covering Insigne's controversial story and rise to where he is right now. Leave a comment if you think Insigne should renew. And if you really liked the video, then go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe for more if you're not already subscribed. I mean, if you're not, what are you doing, bro? And as always, Forza Napoli sempre.